Maestro by Bob Woodward. This book is about Alan Greenspan and his work until 2001. This book will give you the impression that this nation belonged to a class of well-educated, well-read, well-informed, and invisible class of moneyed families living and thriving comfortably, insulated from the rest of the nation. This book clearly demonstrates that Greenspan's skill at the political power games that determine who survives in the cutthroat world of Washington. Greenspan was a math whiz and was always calculating probabilities. In monetary policy, Greenspan believed it was very easy to be wrong, even if you had virtually full knowledge. Someone who was right about 60% of the time would be very fortunate. Greenspan knew well was that annual economic growth above 3% triggered a rapid rise in wages and price. With a love of mathematics, data and charts, Greenspan had developed models for forecasting based on detailed measurements of real economic activity, from loans and livestock to mobile home sales, inventories and interest rate. As investors left stocks for bonds, the stock market should move down. As the prices of stocks went up, their yields in dividends went down. These yields were so low compared to the higher bound yields that it was becoming almost irrational to own stocks. Greenspan often said that the future is unknowable, and he did not overstate his conclusion. He spoke in terms of mostly probabilities. Greenspan thought that Ford was bravest and most correct when he did not meddle with free markets during the recession of 1974-75, even at the risk of his own political future. On Monday, October 19, 1987, the stock market lost 508 points. That means close to 1 trillion in wealth. More than 20% of the stock market's total value was wiped out for the moment. Greenspan had studied 1929 crash. He said that the Black Tuesday crash was the turning point in history. That crash had triggered bank failure and recession, which led to the Great Depression of the 1930s. The market crash of 1929 had been 11.7% compared with the 22.6% drop in 1987. In 1987, the availability of money in the system would be critical in one form or another. Wall Street securities and brokerage firms and their clients would need bank credit, their lifeline, to cover their losses. Greenspan knew it might have been a handful of individuals who made the move. Greenspan telephoned his mother almost daily and visited her weekly, traveling on the shuttle to New York. Greenspan outlined a blueprint for economic recovery. Lower long-term rates would galvanize demand for new mortgages, refinancing at more favorable rates, and more consumer loans. This would in turn result in increased consumer spending, which would expand the economy. Greenspan felt that a growing part of his task was to anticipate the unexpected. Once, when Greenspan had an appointment to see the President Clinton, and his economic team were assembled in the Oval Office. As they waited for the chairman to arrive, the President Clinton had launched into a comedic imitation of the chairman. Speaking in a gloomy, deep voice, he mimicked Greenspan drumming on inflation, inflation, inflation was all important, inflation was the center of the universe, inflation, inflation. It was a pretty good carcinate, and his advisors were in stitches. Greenspan loved the Fed. He had access to the best economic data in the world, and there was an intellectual purity to the work that was done there. He had found his place. The title and seat at the table were less important for him. Bush later said he felt his 1992 election defeat was Greenspan's fault because the chairman did not lower interest rate enough to make the economy recovery more visible to the public. Greenspan felt the threat could resemble the 1987 stock market crash. Even 10 years later, he could still find no credible explanation for the abrupt one-day decline in stock values that had built up over years. Representative Bernie Sanders, a socialist from Vermont, who is treated as a Democrat in the House, pressed Greenspan. According to the United Nations, Mr. Chairman, the world's 225 richest individuals have a combined wealth of over 1 trillion, equal to the bottom 47% of the world's population. 225 people have as much wealth as almost half the world's population. When Clinton's Lewinsky troubles led to his impeachment in the House, "What a shame," Greenspan said, wagging his head in his disbelief. Here was this very smart man, clearly head and shoulders above most of the presidents of the United States in terms of intellect, grasp of policy, seriousness, political skill, and charm. Yet he did not have self-discipline to risk so much for apparently so little. Neither Greenspan nor Rivlin could comprehend it. Greenspan does not like to see the stock market jump sharply in either direction. In a practical sense, a low stock market was more stable.